Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is when you hear this message, I pray that your mind, your heart, and your spirit are all poised to receive, to accept, and to respond to words of wisdom. Ashe. Today, I want to share a brief lesson on the inevitability of Pan-Africanism if you practice Orisa lifestyle. Okay. In other words, if you're a person of African descent and you're really working Orisha, right? I'm not talking about you have like museum altars. I'm talking about you actually are really doing the work to venerate your ancestors, to venerate your Ori and your Orisha. It is inevitable that you are going to become a Pan-Africanist, okay? And for people to proclaim that they are Orisha devotees, but they at the same time isolate themselves from the global Yoruba consciousness. Um, that's regressive, right? That's something that reflects, somebody who's, you're probably traumatized and you're trying to hang on to some little bit of security or the idea of security because you don't want to expand. Okay. And I get it, right? I'm not snubbing my nose at my people who, for example, let's say African Americans. I'm going to be real explicit and specific. Maybe you come from a situation in your town or in your family where, African identity or even Black identity wasn't really strong. It wasn't really pronounced. You didn't know your heritage, you didn't know your history, you didn't know your culture. And then, you stumble upon something in the, you go to a bembe, right? Classic Afro-Cuban Orisha party, right? You go to a bembe and you see the people all dressed in white and people with the beaded necklaces on, and they're singing in unison and they're dancing in unison, and there's all this order, and certain people sit at certain tables, and the ritual and the ceremony is just going on, and it's like unlike anything you've ever seen, and the feeling that you get is remarkable. You've never really felt anything like it, and you gravitate to it. You're fascinated by it, and you want to be a part of it. Okay, and so you join, you start to participate, you start to practice, but then you make the mistake of identifying the Orisha consciousness and the Orisha experience with Cuban culture, right? And honestly, the same thing can happen on the West African side. You go someplace, you see people and they're wearing traditional African clothes. They've got the the gowns and the beads and the beaded staffs, and it's an entirely amazing tradition, right? It's a scene that you can't even imagine, and people are showing reverence to the elders. And maybe you've gone someplace in Africa where you've seen actual chiefs and kings and things like this, and you're just overwhelmed with amazement at the tradition, right? And you want to participate, and you practice, and then you associate your spiritual connection and your cultural connection to Nigerian culture, right? And either way, you can fall into this trap where you think that in order to be a real, authentic, and sincere devotee, you got to be more Nigerian than the Nigerians, and you got to be absolutely intolerant of everything that is not Nigerian. If it's Cuban, or if it's Haitian, or if it's Brazilian, or anything else, if it's not pure, Nigeria, then you just disparage it, and it's like worthless, right? Or the other way around. You could be someone who is, you're so enamored with what you've experienced and what you've found in this diaspora tradition, be it Cuba, be it Brazil, and that you reject the possibility that you could ever gain something from the Nigerian practice or perspective, right? And as an African American, I'm going to tell you both of those perspectives are regressive. That's going backwards. It's not going forwards, right? If you wanted to do that, you should have been a gangbanger, right? You should have been joining the Crips and Bloods or something like that. If you want to, you know what I mean? You want to go backwards and just claim a corner. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's backwards, right? We have already gone through all that. We have been, African from the continent. That's where we came from. We have been South American or Caribbean, right? We know that the way that the slave trade went, some people came directly from Africa to Virginia or to Georgia or whatever, but a lot of people, the majority of the people were coming up from South America, and specifically from the Caribbean, coming into New Orleans, for example. And so historically, the progression of who we are as a people, we've already gone through all that. We've already gone through that to come to this place in the United States. We understand the interconnection of all of us, of all African people, right? And so as you start to venerate your ancestors, as you start to really tap into your ancestral promise, you've got to be aware of your Caribbean ancestry. You've got to be aware of your South American ancestry. You've got to be aware of your West African ancestry. And you've got to be able to claim all of it and represent all of it, right? You are the future of African consciousness and existence. Everything that is possible, we've already lived it. We already embody it, right? And so, yes, rep your heritage, rep your culture, rep your nation, but always in a way that is mature, that demonstrates the fact that you've already been seasoned and you understand the progression of the journey. Okay? Anything else is backwards. Anything else is backwards. We didn't take on an African spiritual tradition to divide ourselves from other Africans. We took on an African spiritual tradition to awaken the ancestral consciousness in all of our people around the world. And that's our function. And it's quite honestly, that's our duty, right? We need to awaken and rescue for all people of African descent the virtues and the power and the freedom that only comes from authentic existence. And that only comes from, being true to who you are and where you come from. And so as much as I am a Yoruba, I am also a Brazilian. As much as I am a Yoruba, I am also a Trinidadian. As much as I'm a Yoruba, I'm also a Cuban. As much as I'm a Yoruba, I am also an African American. And I understand that the spectrum of African identity unifies all of us into a single people with a shared history, a shared experience, a shared vision. Okay? And so that is the process of re-Africanization for the purpose of liberation. This is what our ancestors fought for. This is what our ancestors struggled for. This is what they prayed for. This was their intent for keeping the tradition and the culture alive all around the world, generation after generation after generation. They didn't do it for us to go back into a little hole and divide ourselves by flags. No, that's not the reason why they kept this tradition alive. They kept this tradition alive to bring the family together, for us to recognize that we started off together, we separated, and now our number one goal is to come back with force and with purpose and direction. So let that be your goal, and Let the ancestors accept your promise and your prayer. Ashe.